All right, so we're moving on to understanding angles here a little bit. And in order to understand angles, I think it's really helpful for you to learn how to use a protractor. Okay, a protractor is a half of a circle, right, with an arc, and it usually has some type of measurement. In this case, it has 1 inch, which is 3 barley seeds lined up. But anyway, so it has this arced edge, right, and it has this straight edge, just like a ruler, right? And with this straight edge, we can make lines. Okay, so you might notice on the arc edge, it has these numbers on the outside and on the inside scale, and they on the outside scale goes from 0 to 180, and the inside scale goes from 180 back to 0, right? So they're the same scale, right, but it's a different starting point for the angle, and you'll see here what I mean by it in a second. All right, so let's go ahead and draw a straight line. Okay, a straight line. We'll go from here to here, and we can call this line AB. Sure, line A and B. Okay, and if you might see this here, this little point right here, this is a spot where you can make another point on your line. Okay, and this is the reference point for these angle measurements here and here. Right, and you might notice, right, what is the angle measure of, we'll say from A, we're going to call this point C right here. So what is the measure of angle ACB? ACB, okay? Well, a straight angle, it's a straight line, right? It equals 180 degrees, right? Because if I go from here, if you look here, I go from 0 all the way to 180. That's 180 degrees, or a half of a circle. Okay, so it's a straight angle, also known as a straight angle. Straight angles are 180 degrees. Okay, notice how I named this angle, right? This is the end point. This is what we call the vertice, and that's what we call the end point. Okay, and it can be confusing when it's the 3-letter format. Okay, but let's go ahead and make it a little bit more. Let's draw a ray going from point C to, I don't know, let's make up another point over here, like that. Okay, so I made another point here. It intersects at point C. Make point C bigger so it makes it look like it intersects it better, and we'll call this point D. All right, so this is ray CD or ray DC, but I like going from D to C. Okay, so this has 2 angles, right? There is this arced angle right here, and there's this, we'll call this the double arced angle right there. That's 2 ways to show, another way to show different angles. They're different number of lines. The little arc right here represents, like, hey, this is an angle. This is angle CDCB, right? Angle DCB, starting at one endpoint to the vertice to the other endpoint, right? The vertice, probably spelled wrong, but the vertice is the pivot point for the angle, right? It's the middle of the angle. Okay. You could also, if I didn't have this, if I didn't have that right there, I could just call that angle C if I wanted to. Okay, but I don't. I have this other angle, so I have to differentiate the point, the starting point, and the ending point. Okay, so if I wanted to measure this angle, right, I know that this angle is going to be either like 130 degrees or 50 degrees. Okay, so what do I know about angles? A right angle. Like a right angle, we had talked about it in the other video. Right angles, we'll call this angle, we'll call this line, make that a straight line. I'm going to call that line R, right? And this is a 90-degree angle, okay? So angle, a measure of angle RCB, RCB is 90 degrees. That's what that little symbol means, a little box, right? It's 90 degrees, okay? So this is called a right angle. Okay, that's a right angle. All right, so RCB is 90 degrees. It's a right angle. Okay, so anything that's greater than 90 degrees, if the measure of an angle is greater than 90 degrees, it is obtuse. If a measure of the angle is less than 90 degrees, it is called acute. Such a cute little angle. Okay, so this is the acute angle, angle ACD. Angle ACD is acute, right? So it's got to be either 130 degrees or 50 degrees-ish, right? Maybe a little bit more, but we'll just say it points at that 50 to that 130. Notice how I have that point on that open circle right there, and I have to line up. I gotta line up my straight line with the line that I drew, right? So here is a 50-degree angle. So this angle is 50 degrees. This red angle, angle DCB, has to add up to 180, right? So it's got to be 130 degrees, right? Because this whole thing was ACB was 180 degrees, a straight angle. This angle is 50 degrees. We'll say this angle is angle ACD, and that equals 50 degrees. Okay, and angle DBC is 130 degrees. How we figure? I mean, we can measure it. Yes, there it's 130. But if I know this whole straight thing is 180, well then angle DCB is just 180 minus 50 degrees. So the leftover is 130 degrees. So angle DCB is the obtuse angle. And it equals 130 degrees. Okay, now there's a special relationship right here. Let me get rid of this little red, this one right here. I just wanted to illustrate the obtuse and the acute with that here. Okay, so there's a special relationship here. Angle ACD and angle DCB, this angle, the single dash and the double dash, they add up to 180 degrees, right? So that is when two angles add up to 180 degrees, they are supplementary. Okay? They also are all known to be a linear pair, right? Because they pair up to make a straight line, and line is linear. Okay? So that's something, those are some different definitions and words that get thrown around that you should kind of recognize. Okay? Now say I had another angle right here. Okay, let's go back to this one, and I wanted to make a 90-degree angle. Maybe use a blue line. Use a blue one. I want to make a 90-degree angle, so let me go here, make a little mark at 90, make those lines like this. Right, this makes a right angle again. Okay, and we'll call this point Z because I'm running out of letters. So angle Z, DZC. This is angle DCZ, right? It's 90 degrees, right, minus the 50 degrees because this angle and that angle, it's 3 dashes, right? This angle plus that angle must make 90 degrees, right? So if this is 50 and the whole thing is 90, then 90 minus 50 is 40 degrees, right? So this is a special relationship. Okay, if this is 50 and that's 40 and they add up to 90, so when two angles add up to 90 degrees, they complement each other very well. They are complementary. Complementary angles. Okay, so those are something to remember. Very, very important. Very, very important to remember this. Okay, supplementary angles, and an easy way to remember that is like C comes before S in the alphabet, so C is 90 degrees and S is 180 degrees. Okay, so I think that's enough for this one. We'll move on to more angles and stuff a little later, and there's more stuff you can do with protractor, but right now just making angles. Hope that makes sense.